right, everybody, we're back live right now. The past 3 seconds didn't really exist, and it never really did. And if you really think about it, it's in the past. We're always in the present. There really is no future. It's just a constant present, everybody. So what's going on, Inform Nation Live? Today's topic, and we're going to ask a big question. And I know this big question is going to be a little hard for some of you to swallow, but I hope you take a spoonful of sugar to make that medicine go down. That question is, do Black Lives Matter? According to the media, of course they do. And according to millions of rioters around the country, of course they do. But in the reality of it, do they really? Alex, what do you think?
I don't know if Black Lives Matter. Of course Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. And I would have to say that what this group is doing right now, they have 15 minutes of the spotlight, raining down on them. And they're not using it to kind of propagate the issues that are really influencing their society and their race. Mm-hmm. We have everything that we're going to talk about throughout the show, talking about genetics. We're going to talk about IQ, the education system. We're going to talk about Planned Parenthood. We're going to talk about population, prison populations. We're going to talk about the criminal IQ. And we're going to talk about a little bit different things that you normally do not see in the mass media right now. They usually kind of steer away from these issues. And it's not to say that Black lives don't matter. Black lives do matter. All lives matter. Latinos, whites, Arabs, whatever life that you are, of course it matters.
Human being and having life itself is essential.
Yeah, animals' lives matter, too. All these lives matter.
Mm-hmm.
We are, of course, at the top of the food chain, yet the idea is that, yes, all human lives do matter. Yet if we're going to start to say that all lives matter, then we have to start breaking into what are the causes of what's happening right now. And bringing out the truth in all these kind of different situations. We're seeing all the symptoms of society right now, and it's all really resorting back to problems, and we're not looking at what's causing these problems. And what you see is actually by us talking about this and actually bringing the facts out is that you'll notice that we care more about Black lives than even some of the groups that say they do.
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of like we're giving the hard truth.
I asked a big question on Facebook about a week or so ago, and it was after this whole, Dallas police shooting and everything was all Black Lives Matter and, do police lives matter and all stuff like that. I asked a big question, and the question goes, have you ever seen a Black Lives Matter protest outside an abortion clinic or a Chicago public school or public school in general? Have you ever seen a protest outside an abortion clinic or a public school? I have yet to receive an answer for that question I asked almost 2 weeks ago. I got many comments, many hateful comments on Facebook, a lot of dislikes, a lot of angry faces. And nobody answered the question. Everybody just told me I was stupid. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're ignorant. You don't know nothing. But no one answered the question. Why? Why has no one answered? Because do they not know, or B, just refuse to know?
I think even when you ask that question, everyone's like, oh, do you see anybody in front of a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic or in front of a Chicago public school, especially because education is a huge thing, which we're going to go over today. But no, you don't, and nobody's answering it. Yes, because they have no idea if these protesters are in front of these clinics or these schools. And secondly, they just think you're an idiot, like right off the bat, except they're not even thinking about the question. They're not going and doing the research on it. They're not seeing how many abortions are happening a year or throughout the history of the Black lives. They're not looking into this. They're not looking into their average IQ. They're not looking into how many people are graduating from college, how many people are graduating from high school. And so they're not looking at these fundamental keys and these statistics that will ultimately say that, hey, guess what? You should be focusing a little bit more on these issues instead of just focusing on, police brutality. It's almost like saying the cobweb, in the corner of your room is a little bit more important than feeding your family. It's saying that some little small issue is a lot more important than these really big issues that are really going to screw with your society, with your culture, with your race, and everything like that. So,
if you have anything to say about do Black Lives Matter, do they not? What is your experience with Black Lives Matter? I want you to call in 630-445-1213, and we want to hear your opinion. conversation. But let's just jump right into it. Let's get into the history of Black Lives Matter. How did this thing start? In the summer of 2013, after George Zimmerman's acquittal of the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, the movement began with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. The movement was co-founded by 3 black community organizers, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi. Now, after that, I get that originally out of the blue, the hashtag Black Lives Matter was important. We all understand that, there were troubles going on, and Black Lives Matter, had a good cause that they were representing. But over the years, since 2013, after these 3 years, what has Black Lives Matter turned into? A cop-killing organization? A quasi-communist organization funded by, obviously, communist groups. If you look them up, George Soros, MoveOn.org, those are communist front groups.
And the thing is with that is they're almost being targeted as a terrorist group now, especially since the Dallas shootings. I mean, the one thing that was really weird about the Dallas shootings was that how did the protests know which street to take in order to get by those buildings? That's
a big question right there. Now, if you look at the protest that was going down in downtown Dallas, there was no posted route of the protest and which way they were going to take through the city. Now that begs the question, how did those shooters know where the protest was going to go, where the march was going, which heading on which street?
And that's weird.
Yeah, absolutely. How did those shooters know? The only way you can say that is they were tipped off by key members of the Black Lives Matter protest, the protest leaders and community organizers that was organizing the rally. They knew which way they were going to go, and they tipped off the shooters that we were going to be at this street at this time, be there.
And the funny thing was they tried to take out that one that black guy in the street that was holding his gun that turned it over to people, and they said, "Oh, this guy's a suspect," even though he's on like every single video that like nothing, he's doing nothing. Like the shootings are going on, and he's standing there in videos. And I mean, they came out afterwards, but then he hands his gun over to the cops and everything. He's just saying, "Hey, I just want to let you know, by the way, it's not me." So there's a lot of good people out there. Yet that they put him on the TV and everything like that, I think that was bad publicity for that guy, and they maybe should not have done that. Targeted him as a suspect. And then they were starting to talk about, there was only one shooter, even though that there was reports of multiple different shooters. I don't know exactly where the story's gone so far. I haven't followed it too closely lately. But do you know how many shooters that they ended up saying it was in all? I think
originally they came down to, they were saying that it was, the police on the ground were saying there was multiple shooters, at least 3 from different angles. Mm-hmm. And of course, with the media, they always spin it down into there was just one lone shooter that took down all those people. Yeah. Just like there was one guy that shot over 100 plus people in Orlando. Mm-hmm. One guy, 100 shots, hundreds of rounds of ammo.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
And then, to bust in on this Black Lives Matter topic, a lot of these protests that they're coming out and doing, I would say, are very counterproductive to their cause. They're going out and they're acting irrational when they're coming out. Even reporters that just want to pick up the scoop on what they're doing or the protests that they're at. They're coming to these reporters and they're screaming, they're yelling at them, they're saying, "Oh, you're just part of the mass media, you don't care what we have to say," and everything. And they won't let these reporters even get a question in. And it just baffles me that you have that talking about that spotlight on you, and yet you don't want to do anything about it that is important. You want to keep on acting ignorant. You want to keep on acting irrational. Mm-hmm. You want to start causing riots. I mean, these aren't protests. These are full-blown riots that are going on. I mean, if you want to get people on your side, you're going to have to do it a little bit differently. Not to mention, somebody posted a great picture of Martin Luther King walking down the streets and everything. Here's a guy that's dressed in a suit and a tie. He's surrounded by a bunch of his other black colleagues, all dressed in suits and ties. There's white people in the crowd, too. They're dressed very nicely. They're doing it very peacefully. And they go up, they speak their point. They don't get angry. They don't get, riled up, and they don't start punching people, throwing things. They don't swear at people. They're very respectful. And that is how that civil rights movement got started. I mean, it was very peaceful.
I hate the people that compare the civil rights movement in the 60s to Black Lives Matter today.
It's totally different.
Absolutely. First of all, in the 60s, there were obviously real problems that were going on in the South. Jim Crow was still existing. You couldn't drink at this water fountain. You couldn't use this bathroom. You couldn't eat at this lunch counter. And those were real problems that were occurring. So people took it upon themselves to end that type of oppression. And they ended it. They ended it peacefully. They didn't get out and start rioting and burning down cities like they did in Baltimore and Ferguson, all right, over an obvious criminal that had just attacked a police officer and grabbed the cop's gun and all this stuff. Is that they came out in court. All that stuff came out. It's all public knowledge that man initiated the contact with that cop. It wasn't the cop's fault.
And, I mean, you think about it. You think the civil rights movement would have seen such a progressive, changing movement if they would have acted like this? No, they wouldn't have. They would have said, no, sorry, you're acting too irrational, too dumb about this. We're not going to treat you fairly. I mean, if they would have went at it at that certain time, I mean, that was a time where, yes, race was a huge thing then. Mm-hmm. And so they would have found more of a way, if they would have acted as if they're acting today, to not give them equal rights. So you definitely see that they need to change kind of the aspect of what they're doing right now. They need to act a little bit more tempered, a little bit more patient about what they're doing instead of getting out in all these frenzies and everything that they're kind of getting all riled up in and actually going out and saying they're going to shoot police, having people online saying, hey, by the way, on July 9th, I want everybody to go out who cares about this and go shoot police.
We condone, it's like that they're saying, we condone violence, use it.
Yeah.
When it's violence that they're protesting against.
And, they want the violence.
I know.
And the thing is, just like Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a very violent guy in the beginning. And, he had this huge group behind him. Yet when he started to become more peaceful and kind of understanding that the violence that he was escalating was just feeding into the government's machine, he decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this thing peacefully. And what ended up happening to him? He got shot. I mean, just like Martin Luther King, he went in there very peacefully, very professionally, got shot. I mean, if you had someone like that coming in from the Black Lives Movement, they would probably get shot as well, too. But what do they call those people? Martyrs? Martyrs. I mean, you're going to have a bunch of people following them. And if they're really, making a good movement that means something that people do want, that's professional and very morally.
That's aimed at a goal.
Yeah.
Not just, we don't like police and we don't like white people because they made us oppressed. When it's for the fact that poor people have been voting Democrat for 50 plus years and they're still poor.
And, that's the thing. They keep on doing it.
And they keep on doing it. They keep on allowing themselves to be poor. They keep on never protesting at the school and that the schools are going down and that the food is so bad and the crime in the neighborhoods and the drugs in the neighborhoods and the gangs. Nobody's protesting that. You never hear a damn word from Black Lives Matter about the gang activity in Chicago that's killed almost 2,000 people in 2016 alone. It was 2,000 in 2015, and by this time today in 2016, it is over 2,000.
I mean, every weekend, there's like at least 10-something deaths and shootings. You don't see Obama going on there talking about that.
No, I never do. And just to get away from the whole police thing, we're going to talk about do Black Lives Matter in general to other black people. A quote from Pastor Clenard Childress Jr. reads, "The most dangerous place for an African American is the womb." This is a black pastor protesting against abortion and the amount of abortions that happen in the abortuaries and abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood, specifically targeted in the black neighborhoods. I'm going to read a couple studies out right now. Minority women constitute only about 13% of the female population from ages 15 to 44 in the United States, but they underwent approximately 36% of the abortions. Minority women, 13% of the population, of the female population. Triple. They went under over 36% of the abortions. On average, 1,876 black babies are aborted every day in the United States. And I'm against that. Don't think that I'm for abortions at all. I'm against abortions. I'm against abortions, especially of blacks. This incidence of abortion has resulted in a tremendous loss of life. It has been estimated that since 1973, black women have had about 16 million abortions.
Since what year?
Since 1973, that was Roe v. Wade. Out of 54 million abortions since Roe v. Wade, approximately 54 million, sometimes 55 million, depending on the studies you find, 16 of those 55 million have been black people.
I mean, that's over a fourth.
That's over a quarter.
It's over a quarter.
A quarter of all abortions have been black. Michael Novak has calculated, quote, since the number of current living blacks in the United States is 36 million, the missing 16 million represents an enormous loss. For without abortion, the America's black community would now number 52 million persons. It would be 36% larger than it is. Abortion has swept through the black community like a scythe, cutting down every fourth member, unquote. A highly significant 1993 Howard University study showed that African American women over age 50 were 4.7 times more likely to get breast cancer if they had an abortion compared to women who had not had any abortions. So that's tying in the cancer, the amount of breast cancer going on, with the amount of abortions that have occurred.
I mean, if you look at that, I mean, if they're aborting their kids more than any other race, I mean, in their society, I mean, black lives don't matter. On that case,
yeah.
in the black community, black lives don't matter if you're caring about you're aborting your kid 3 times more likely than any other race, and 3 times more just in percentage basis than any other race that's around. I mean, that's blasphemy. I mean,
and so many people are against that. I'm against that. I'm against blacks getting aborted by their own race. I'm against black on black crime just killing innocent black men, and black men just going into jail. The jails filling up, the fatherless homes, the amount of people on welfare, the poverty.
I mean, yeah, you want to start talking about crime and whatnot. I mean, if you don't have a father in your house, I mean, you're more likely to commit a crime. You're more likely to put in the justice system. If you have a single parent, you're more likely. If you're on the welfare system, you're more likely. If you're a single mom, all these things make more and more and more likely. Not to mention, black people. I have the statistics right here, and I'll read it down by race so everyone has an idea. White people represent 63% of the United States population, yet only 32% do they represent in the prison system. Hispanics represent 17% of the U.S. population, yet only represent 22% in the prison population. Black people represent 12.3% of our population and represent 37%. That's over 3 times the amount of their population that they represent in the prison system. And you have Asians represent about 5% of our population, and they represent less than 1% in the prison population. And then you have other, which is like a mixed race, 2.7% of the American population and 8% in the prison. I mean, so you could see here that white people, 63% of the population, they represent 32%. It's about half. So about half the people are getting put in there. I mean, yet on the other side, black people have 37% compared to their 12.3% that they represent in the population. It's not equal. If you want to have an equal prison system, if you think everything's equal, then you should represent 12.3% in the prison population. That would be normal. If everything went fine and all the races were all like that, I mean, you get to go in. Yet I do know, I will back up black people on this one, is that they do certainly, and there has been studies behind this, that they do get treated a little bit differently when it comes to court systems now. If you have a white person that commits the same crime as a black person, now the question I have is what's the history of that person? What's their criminal history? Did they commit the exact same crime? What did they act like in the courtroom? What did they say in the courtroom? What did they dress like in the courtroom? But I will say, on average, black people do get a longer prison sentence than a white person for the exact same crime. But it also has to do with how you present yourself.
Exactly.
Multiple different accounts behind you. Do you have a warrant out?
Can you afford a good lawyer?
Yeah, can you afford a good lawyer? All these different things, I think, play into that spectrum.
Absolutely. We're going to go over right now 5 devastating facts about black on black crime. Fact number 1, over 1,400 more black Americans murdered by blacks in 2 years than were lynched from 1882 to 1968. According to FBI data, 4,906 black people murdered other blacks in 2010 and 2011. That is 1,460 more black Americans killed by other blacks in 2 years than were lynched from 1882 to 1968, according to the Tuskegee Institute. So think about that. More black people are killing other black people, which I detest. Absolutely. I detest murder of all kinds. That there is more black on black crime today than there has been lynchings from white people to black people. More lynching, more crime committed but in the black race today than there has been in lynchings from 1882 to 1968. And how many years is that? Almost 60 plus years? 70 years? It's absolutely incredible.
That's ridiculous.
Absolutely. But somehow Black Lives Matter. But only Black Lives Matter when it's done by a white person or a cop. Not even the color of the cop. It's just cops in general. If you're a black cop, you're just about to get caught up as just as much as a white cop is.
Yeah, the question is I have for this black on black crime, and it definitely happens in a lot of these ghettos and everything that they live in. My question is, why aren't the Black Lives Matter protesters setting up little brigades across all these national cities that we have, like Chicago, for instance, that's really bad on the south side.
New York, L.A., D.C., these inner city crime areas.
Yeah, I mean, why aren't they going in there and, like, protesting on the streets in there and, like, not letting gang members drive around and shoot? Why don't they, like, have a patrol?
They're
like
right
a
there.
citizens patrol. Why aren't they telling, hey, get back in your house? Or why aren't there hundreds of these good people standing on the streets trying to protest the crime that's happening right in their front yard?
And that even goes to, that ties in right with the Second Amendment. That's what the Second Amendment is for. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Why aren't these local good people, because there's good people in those inner city areas that are just as much against this crime and drugs and Black Lives Matter as just as much as anybody else is? How come they aren't organizing together in small coalitions and groups, working with the local police department to patrol their areas and have little citizens militias out at night, making sure the drugs are off the streets and the gangs are off the streets? Why isn't that happening?
I mean, the one thing is that these people need to realize is that, it's not white against black. It's not white against Latino. It's not Latino against black. Whatever it may be. It's actually it's the government. It's the state, and they're dividing you, and they're keeping you in these ghettos. Except everybody in these ghettos keep on voting for their handouts. They vote for their welfare. They vote for their Obamacare. They vote for the Obama phones. Whatever. They vote for their Section 8 housing. I mean, it's all these different things that they keep on voting for time and time and time again that keep them in the poor class. I mean, you guys want to get out of it. You want to have a better education system. You want to have a better, park, a yard around you, better housing and everything like that. Get off the welfare. Stop voting for these Democrats that don't care about you.
Yep.
It's not Hillary that cares about you. It's not Bernie Sanders that care about you. Actually, those are the people who don't give a crap about you. All they want to do is give you your little handout so you vote again for them, and they're just going to stick you deeper and deeper into crap. But on the other hand, who everyone says is racist, Donald Trump, I mean, somebody like that, and I'm not saying I fully support everything that he says, but what I'm saying is that's a businessman, and what he wants to do is he wants to create more opportunities for people to get on financial ladders, for people to have a good job, have a good living, make things back in America again. I mean, that's a guy who's going to help the poor class and not degrade the poor class like a lot of these other Democrats. Yet, at the same time, everybody is yelling at him for being a racist, even though he's probably the guy that up there cares the most about a race.
I want everybody to look back in the past 8 years. I want everybody to look 8 years ago in 2008. What were you doing? Were you old enough to understand? I know I really wasn't. But some of you that were old enough to understand, I want you to ask yourself, how much racial and class division has occurred 8 years ago? Not really many people can't think of it.
Not a lot.
Not a lot at all.
Before Obama got in office, was there a lot of
Obama
class race?
has been the most divisive and racist and just class warfare, racial division president that people have ever seen. I have ever seen, but most people have ever seen.
I mean, he went on air, and after the whole Dallas shooting, he said, "Oh, it was such a problem that we had for these two guys that got shot in Louisiana and Minnesota." But he never brought up the cops that got shot.
No.
That's a problem. Bring them both up. You want to talk about it, bring them both up at least. Don't just stick to one.
And he was at the funeral of those cops, a big memorial service. He mentioned himself 45 times during his speech. Never, and only a few times did he mention the police officers, but he mentioned himself and black people 45 times. The man is a charlatan. He's a fake. He's a mask that they'll put up there to calm the masses down because he's black, he's articulate, he's a pseudo celebrity, and that's why people love him.
It's ridiculous.
But it's absolutely ridiculous. No, not this much race division has occurred between people since Obama has brought race relations between all races, black, white, Hispanic, I don't care what color or creed you are. He's brought it back 150 years, pre-Civil War.
I mean, they're dividing us. It's divide and conquer. I mean, if people aren't getting it by now, it's divide and conquer by the elite. They are dividing the masses of people in the United States so they will never understand what their true problems are, which is a big state government. I mean, it's crippling us more and more and more, except nobody's paying attention to what's going on Capitol Hill, but yet everyone's paying attention to this race crap. Mm-hmm. It's BS.
And this is for the white people.
Get over it.
The white people out there, too, you're not winning either.
No, we're all slaves. I mean, to tell you the truth, we're all slaves.
We're all slaves.
If everybody doesn't get that, we are all slaves already.
We're all slaves monetarily to the system. We're all slaves socially to the system. They've got you all. They've got all, even me included. That's why I got on this microphone, is to tell people get off. Break those chains of yourself. White, black, I don't care. We're all Americans and we're all being enslaved. We're all being divided against ourselves so we can never come together and restore what America has really been. They've divided us so much. Can't you see it? It's division so much that even when you're walking out, how many of you out there have just been walking out in a grocery store and you see a person of another color? And part of you inside is like, oh, I gotta be careful. Gotta be careful what I say. We can't look at that person. Can't do this. See, they've got you already.
It's the media that does that.
They've psychologically broken you with race, with religion, with political ideology. They've divided everybody so they can never be put back together. And that's what Black Lives Matter is doing, especially to the black population. It's the Judas goat. It's leading you down the road. So that when you show up at the slaughterhouse one day, sheep, you'll never know what hit you until you smell the blood of the sheeple in front of you. And that's why I protest against Black Lives Matter. Not because I protest against their ideology, but what they're really doing. Do Black Lives Matter? Of course. White lives matter. Mexican lives matter. All lives matter. Humankind as a whole matters. Consciousness as a whole matters. We've been put here by God. The human race, the greatest thing to ever hit this planet, has been put here. For some reason, is it to be racially and socially divisive against each other? No. It's to go to the stars one day.
Yeah, it's to learn something about each other. You know, we all grew up in different cultures and different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the one thing is we all are here to learn. And that was the great part about America. You had this American ideology, and yes, we understood what America was about and all the freedoms that we had here. Yet nowadays, you know, everyone's coming to America because they thought it was such a great country, yet they're trying to bring, and I get it, you want to bring your culture, your foods, you know, your heritage and everything here, and that's great and all. Yet at the same time, you need to be American. You know, it's what it is. It's a country that made, you know, the difference in the world. It's made differences in people's lives. I mean, we created all these freedoms and all these amendments for everybody, and now they're kind of going against that. They're burning the American flag. They're putting up other flags of their other countries. It's like, hey, you live in America. You know, why don't you fly that flag? Because you came here, you like what we were doing here, but now you're killing what we're doing here. You're making it like back home. You're making it like the place that you moved from. And so, we could accept all these different cultures, the African American race, the Latino races, the European races, the Asian races, the South American races, all these different races that we have in this country. And that's what was great about here. We all figured out how to be American. We all figured out, we all had these morals and these ideologies. Who cares what religion and stuff we were? But on a grand old basis, we had these certain rights and these certain, ideas and morals that we all agreed upon. And that is what is written on the Constitution. We all agreed that we should be enabled to have each of these things granted to us as, human beings born on this land. And yet, through all this culture and throughout this all division and what you're able to say to different people, we're killing that ideology. We're killing the Constitution. We're crapping all over it. That's what you're seeing happen right now is through this Black Lives Matter movement, through all these Muslim issues and everything like that. It's all division. It's all separating all of us. It's creating these microaggressions. These, you're not able to speak your mind anymore. You're being censored out all over the place now if you speak your own mind. Everybody's so kind of sensitive to all these issues that you're not even allowed to talk to people about facts like we're doing right now. Like if we were on a big radio station right now, who knows if we'd be able to have this conversation right now. But we're on 24/7 The Stream. Check it out, 247thestream.com. They have a bunch of other different shows. But we're able to be here and talk about what is really happening. And, we're looking at statistics because as much as some of these groups don't want to look at statistics, they're real. They're numbers. They are real. I get statistics aren't everything. But when you start looking at some of even these police brutality things and everything, they get statistics. They know that when they walk up to a car, if it's a black or it's a white or if it's a Mexican person, the white guy is less likely to commit a crime or shoot him or try to get away. It's just a statistic. So if you want to break those statistics, be a good citizen. When you get pulled over, act respectful. Don't do what don't try to reach for anything. Just stand there, do whatever they say. And, I'm not for this whole militarization of the police either, so don't get me on that point. But what I'm saying is if you act like a common citizen with respect and with a good attitude, you're not going to have these problems. And you can start pushing those statistics back. Because guess what? If a black guy got pulled over and a cop went up to him and the black guy acted either, irrationally or he tried pulling a gun or he tried getting away, guess what? That's ingrained in that cop's head right now. He's going to go to another guy, and that guy's going to be black, and he's going to have kind of the same notion that might happen again. It's discrimination is what we do as a human species. We discriminate. We know that from previous things that have happened to us, we can discriminate and take statistics on if it's going to happen again in the future. It's how we became the dominant species of the world. We were able to watch patterns and things.
Absolutely.
We've been able to decipher.
We've been able to think throughout time. And that's even in the epigenetics of the human species itself, that our ancestors discriminated that, well, we're not going to go over here because there's bad things over here. We're going to go to this area. And that's ingrained inside of us. So discrimination is part of the human genome.
So you can't not discriminate. That's the thing. And they're teaching a lot of people in schools these stuff. Oh, don't discriminate. I discriminate every day. In order for me to be successful in life, I need to discriminate. If I'm unable to discriminate, I'm not going to know the difference between right and wrong, left and right. I'm not going to know between good food, bad food. I'm discriminating every day, and everyone discriminates. If you think you're undiscriminative, take a look at yourself and look what you discriminate between all day long. You discriminate all over the place. What people wear, what people watch, what people eat, what people do, what jobs people have. All these different things, you discriminate.
What's the definition of discrimination? Recognition and understanding of the difference between one thing or the other.
There you go. That's discrimination, knowing the differences between things.
Absolutely. You were even touching on some facts before, and I wanted to get back to that. I had it up right here. Here. It would take cops 40 years to kill as many black men as have died in the hands of other black men alone in 2012. And the University of Toledo criminologist examined the latest crime data from the FBI supplementary homicide reports and Centers for Disease Control and found that an average of 4,472 black men were killed by other black men annually between January 1st, 2009 and December 31st, 2012. So in those 4 years, or what is that, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 4 years, over 4,472 black men were killed by other black men. And that's absolutely disgusting that human life is worth nothing to some people.
And
It's worth nothing to some people.
And the thing is about that really, I watch videos and stuff on YouTube all the time, and I see, you ever check out these videos of practical jokers that go out and they'll screw with people out in the street and whatnot. And this is one thing that I noticed about my years of watching these funny practical joke videos. You have these practical jokers. Doesn't matter what race they are. It really doesn't. There's always white, black. There's always like some guy in the group that's a different race. They'll go up to people and they'll screw around with them or whatever it is. And you go up to a white guy and he'll get mad. Maybe he'll push you, whatever it is. Very unlikely that he'll resort to violence. He'll maybe call you a name, walk away, act like an asshole. You go up to black people though in these areas, and they'll resort to violence really fast. That's the part that scares me, is that they're so quick to resort to violence as a means to an end instead of talking it out, walking the other way, turning the other cheek, whatever have it be. But, they resort to violence so fast. I've seen some of them where a guy got a gun drawn on him. He got beat down to the ground.
I saw that same one.
They just resort to violence so fast. And I'm not saying they all do, because it's a few of them, or it's, maybe on an average. But, that resorts back to violence and IQ. Do you understand what's going to happen if you do this? That's called thinking ahead. If you commit a crime, are you more likely to know what your outcome's going to be, or are you just acting in the moment? And so that comes down to IQ, which I have the statistics of IQ right here, which Asians have the highest IQ, being 106, yet Jewish people have about a 113 IQ. White people have a 103 IQ. Hispanics have an 89 IQ, and black people have an average IQ of 85. Now, this is a bell curve, so there's a majority of people sitting in the middle, and this is the average, not saying that anybody can be higher or lower than these. But your average criminal's IQ that's in the state and federal penitentiary systems is 90. So you look at these two IQ scores that are 89 and 85 that represent Hispanic and black people. And you can understand that maybe they aren't thinking so far ahead, that they're not understanding what's going to happen to them if they commit this crime. And so they're easier to resort to violence because it's something that we used to do in our ancestral pasts. We always had, fight or flight. You always had to do something, act in the moment. And that's kind of stayed with them even to this day. And I don't want to carry on too long here in this little rant, but it drops back to your certain type of genes that you have in your body, certain type of genetics. And I'm going to break this down for everyone really quick, if you don't mind if I take the mic for a second.
Go ahead.
David.
You got to break this down.
So there's a gene R and there's a gene K, and I'm off the top of my mind, I don't have it sitting in front of me, but gene R represents more of the fast reproducing gene, screwing around like rabbits. They're reproducing like rabbits. You want to produce people, or you want to produce your kin as fast as possible to have the best outcome to survive in nature. Gene Ks are more things like apes or dolphins. Human being race usually is more of a gene K, yet you can still find division between gene R and gene K within human species. But those people kind of took care of their kin a lot longer. They had less babies. They protected them a lot longer, and they grew them up to have a better, successful life in order to survive nature. Yet, what you do find is the difference between northern hemisphere people and southern hemisphere people. So we all know northern hemisphere people are more than likely the white race because we used to live in, colder regions where it was snowing all the time. We have the white skin, so we could absorb the sunlight a lot better. Then you have the southern hemisphere races, which are like Latinos and blacks. They have a black skin because they don't need to absorb as much as the sun, and they need to protect their bodies from the sun, and so why they have the hair that they have as well too, and it's why we have the hair that we as white people have. Yet what you end up finding is that white people in the northern hemisphere had the thing called winter. And when winter came around, you had to store food and you had to be prepared for winter for about 6 months where you were not able to grow any crops. Animals were hibernating, plants were treated for that time. And so you weren't able to eat anything around you. So you had to store all your food. So what that took throughout evolution was a part of our brain that started figuring out to think ahead in the future, try to analyze things a little bit more and think farther ahead in time, and so we could prepare for the winter to come and to save our race or our kids or whatever it may be. Yet on the other hand, if you grew up in the southern hemisphere, or the Black and Latinos, what you find is that you always had fruits, animals, vegetables around you all year round. So they did not have as much of a part of their brain that adapted to actually thinking farther in the future as the white race did. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. What I'm saying is that the Southern Hemisphere people with the gene R selection actually are able to enjoy life a little bit more, actually. They live a little bit more in the moment. They're always about their music, partying, festivals and all that. They're all about that. And on the North, we're a little bit more analytical. We're a little bit more stuck in our head with certain things. But right now, what you're seeing is a society that has both in it. You're seeing America has a combination of the white races and the Southern Hemisphere races, and you're seeing what's happening. You're seeing that maybe white people are getting pissed off because we're not analyzing further enough down the line. You're getting Black and Latinos being pissed off because we're not living enough in the moment, and who cares about finances? But the fact of the matter is that we do have to worry about these finances, and that it is part of the Gene K selection that lets us know about what we're going to do in the future. That's how our brains have adapted in time. And so that's just kind of the world that we're living in, and it's just, I'm not trying to be mean about it. It just is what it is, and there's no right, there's no wrong with it. But I'm letting everybody know that our brains have adapted in a different way than people who are spread out throughout the world. It's just what we do. It's just human beings.
Exactly. Even coupling on that, you can see what's happening in today's time. What more? You can say more white people are having less children. Okay, and more was that Gene K, less children. And with Gene R, those people are having more children.
The welfare system.
The welfare system is allowing them to have more children. Not because they don't want to, or they don't want to have more children, or they're forced to, but they're allowed to have more children and be supplemented and give subsidies based on the amount of children they have compared to white people. So what we can see now is that a large percentage of the population is occurring with that Gene R gene, and it's getting to
it's even coming into white people too. So
absolutely,
it's breeding,
even with race mixing. And so with white people having less and less children, the race is white people are starting to, not the population is starting to go down, while Gene R population is starting to rise. So as we're having that Gene K go down, less and less people in the population are able to analyze and think logically enough into the future where we can plan 100 to 200 years in advance of ourselves to allow civilization to grow and merge into that type of society. But with the Gene R, that is not prevalent right now. It's not being utilized as much as the Gene K. Or the Gene K is not being utilized as much as the Gene R is.
We're living in a technological era, and I hate to say that that's how it happened, but it is. It's what we all have to deal with. So it's teaching yourself, and you could always, turn on and turn off certain parts of your DNA. I've heard. So it's all epigenetics. When it comes down, it's the environment that you're in, it's what you study, it's what you read, it's who you're around, what environment that you're in, the air that you're in, all these different sorts of things. We have a caller here, so welcome.
Hey, caller, you're live right now on Inform Nation.
Hi. I've been listening to your program this whole time, and I was thinking there's something that, I can't speak on your DNA things. I do know one thing, just as a parent, you get welfare, you're enabled by the government, you maybe have a whole lot of kids, you might not be serving them up the right amount of food, the right type of food. There's no father because they're all in jail, or there are multiple fathers. There's no one spending time with these children, raising them upright. They have no example. Then it's just the same thing keeps repeating itself.
Absolutely.
These little boys grow up to be just like their fathers, who are just like their fathers, and in the meantime, they're just getting younger and younger and younger all the time. It's never going to end because we keep electing Democrats.
We know for a fact, it's even come out that young men who are raised by women either turn up to be, boys that are raised by women turn out to be boys or women. There's no male role model left in a large majority of the population, including the white population. How many fatherless marriages and unwedded and out of wedlock children are occurring, especially in today's society? disenfranchising a lot of the youth. They're not getting that male role model, that male energy, especially for young men, in order to set a good example for them in the home. The mother is a single parent. The mother's out working all day. They go to school or they don't go to school, and they turn to look for that male role model figure in the community. And who is that? The gangs.
And you could even...
That's right, and I also think they should get cut off. I mean, if you think back to the days of cowboys, you had somebody looked at you wrong, and you got to just shoot them in the middle of the street. Laws had to be enacted to keep people in control. Somehow, in today's society, we're certainly able to, settle our differences, whether it's face-to-face or in a court of law, without blowing each other's heads off in the street and at the saloon down the street and, beating your kids half to death, and all these things that laws have come to protect people from themselves and from each other. Mm-hmm. If you stop enabling these people to get more and more money for every child they crank out, they would stop. I can speak on Germany. About 20 years ago, maybe a little more, there used to be a 2-child limit. So you could get aid from the government for up to 2 kids. If you have 3, 4, 5, 10, and you can't feed them, then sorry, there's where the garbage dumpster is, or go to a shelter, go get family to help you. And believe it or not, they didn't have those kind of problems. Somehow,
sounds like a good idea.
The men didn't impregnate all the women, the girls kept their legs closed, however you want to look at it. The government protected them from themselves, and they were able to deal with it.
That's a very good plan, and you can almost see it. Either subconsciously or consciously. These women, especially these women on the welfare checks and everything, that are breeding more into that gene R selection. Either they're doing it consciously or subconsciously. But as we can see, either about 1/3 of black men, and I think even more than that, go see prison. 1/4 and more drop out of school and everything like that. So it's almost like they need to keep on pumping out the babies to survive in nature and to survive in society right now.
Absolutely.
And either that's consciously or subconsciously they're doing it. I find it maybe more of a subconscious notion, but it is consciously that they are getting these checks in, and they know the more that they pump out, the higher the check that they're going to get in.
Hey, caller, thank you for your point. I really did. She brought up a really good point.
Yeah, I like that.
That the amount of people that they're cranking out in the system, that are being fomented to be allowed to be born in the system, is crippling it. Mm-hmm. Is crippling the welfare system, just allowing people just as much as people flooding into this country.
Oh, yeah.
And jumping on the welfare system is breaking it. The system is already broken. It's already broken. And by putting more and more weight on it, you're just going to crack it out until it collapses. And do you think they really want that? I think they might really want the system to collapse.
I mean, it's the Democrats that want the system to collapse. Because then guess what? Who comes in at the end of the day to save the day? Government. Bigger government. Even bigger than right now.
I have a big notion. This is what everybody's going on right now, especially with Obama coming out and saying, "Oh, we need to reform the police departments, and we need to get these people trained again because there's a lot of black people are being killed is outrageous." You know what they're going to do with the police departments, ladies and gentlemen? They're going to federalize them. And not only just federalize them under the federal government level, they're going to come in with UN sanctions and trade treaties and UN implementations on how to police the police departments, taking power away from the states, taking power away from the communities, and giving it to the federal government.
And the funny thing is, I actually saw a lady speaking on Black Lives Matter, one of their spokesperson, actually talking about how they need to take away police and do something else. What are you going to do? What's the something else that you're going to do? And a lot of these people don't even understand that when you're creating all these riots and you're doing all this with this Black Lives Matter movement or any of these other protesters that are going on right now, is that when you're doing this, you're giving the state or the government or the federal government or the police more of a attitude to treat you more poorly. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the militarization of the police. They know that they can militarize the police a lot more faster if you keep on acting like idiots.
Yep.
That's just what it is.
And that is the goal.
Yeah, and they're propagating that.
Yes.
Because they want the militarization of police. They want that. The elite want that. You are feeding in to their ideology. You're not feeding into it.
You're not fighting against them.
No.
You're sure not. And I have a big question for all the Black Lives Matter supporters in Black Lives Matter movement. What do you want? What's your end goal? What is the thing that you want to happen? All white people gone? All police gone? no racism? Well, racism is there already.
I mean, they're stirring it up. They're stirring up the racism. And to tell you the truth, I'm not going to lie. Based on me, I'm going to say this. Black people are more racist than white people.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, and I'm going to say that in my little niche of a world. And there might be white people that are racist. I'm sure that there are. And there's probably black people that aren't racist either. But usually I find that they're blaming it on race all the time. They're talking about it. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about it. Then they'll say, oh, well, it's because you got white privilege. Well, guess what? I do have white privilege. And you know why I have white privilege? Reason I have white privilege is because thousands and thousands of years ago, our race set ourselves up for more success in the future. Maybe you should blame your ancestors. I don't know what you should do, but stop blaming me for it.
And what do you do?
I'm not talking about it. I'm letting you live a perfectly equal life. I don't look at people differently. Like, come on, like, get with it.
Yeah, what white privilege do I have? I have to go to work just like everybody else does. I make a minimal amount of money just like everybody else does.
Not to mention, if you're a black person, you want to go to school or anything like that, I feel like it's easier. It's easier for you to succeed than it is for a white person to succeed because there's more of you not succeeding, meaning there's more positions available for the small percentage that do want to succeed.
Absolutely, and especially with affirmative action and what they have to hire a certain demographic of people.
Even though that certain demographic of people, even if you know in TV shows right now, they'll have a black person in there, even though black people only represent 12.3% of the population. That means that about 1/10 of people are black. Yet in every TV show, or like gay people, between 1% and 5% are gay. They always have to put one of them on the TV show, even though realistically they do not represent that amount of the population.
And how is this country so racist? We have a black president.
Yeah.
We have a black attorney general. We have a black person on the Supreme Court. There's multiple black people in Congress. There's multiple black people involved in policing, what's the word I'm looking for? Authoritative positions and political positions around this country and in big corporations. There's people in high management that are black. Where is the division? Where is the racism?
The racism is only happening because they talk about it and they think it's something, but it's really not anything.
Think about, folks. The racism is not real. It's only in your mind.
Yep.
There exists no racism out here in 3D space. Nope. There's none. Everybody has the exact same rights as everybody else. We went through the civil rights era. You have the same constitutional rights as everybody else. Same as every other group.
So start acting like it.
Absolutely. There's no racism. The racism is in your mind. It's in your mind. It's not out here. So what does that show about people? That they're being mind controlled. That the media is breaking them. Spiritually, mentally, and physically as well. It's driving people against themselves because they see that there's this big problem going on. But outside of the television, there is no problems going on. Think about it. Outside of the television that controls your mind, there is no racism and there is no problems. You create your own reality, and you create the own problems that manifest and affect you. Don't let them affect you.
Act above them.
Act above them.
Don't fall to them.
And we can all just survive another day in this world, this rock floating through space. That's the only one around that we know of that we can live on. And we all have to live here together. And if we don't all live here together, we have nowhere else to go, folks. There's no other land in this country, in this world to form a separate country. It's all bought up. It's all taken advantage of. The only place we can really have a lasting stronghold is here in the United States. And without it, we're all going to fall. Wrapping this up real quick, my dad brought this up, and I really want to get to this. If the whole idea is, do Black Lives Matter? Why are we asking ourselves if lives matter? Like the question asked at the Democratic National Convention, do Black Lives matter or do all lives matter? Why do we have to ask ourselves as humans if lives matter? What if we lost about ourselves as humanity, as free humans? What if we lost that we have to ask if things matter? Do Christians matter? Does God matter? Does the Constitution matter? Does freedom matter? Does anything matter? If things don't matter, what's it all for? What's life for if things don't matter? Things matter to you. Your family matters. Your life matters. Your children matter. And if we get divided against each other on figuring out what matters and what doesn't, what have we done? We haven't progressed, we've regressed. And that has been Inform Nation. Everybody, InformNationLive.com is the website. Check it out on Facebook, SoundCloud, Twitter, Instagram.
Subscribe below.
Subscribe below to this video. You need to go to the YouTube channel and you need to check out all those videos, because if you want to see what we look like and how we really present this show, not just a voice but a face, you're not going to want to miss it. Alex Gabriel, David Sick, signing off.
See you out, everyone.
Have a good night. And remember, everything matters. All lives matter. Stay good, everyone. Have a good night.